So, you guys, the recruiting early period is over. I want you to comment down below. Are you pleased with where LSU is right now? Because, look, we did a live stream this weekend about the NIL. Is LSU falling behind on name, image, and likeness? How are they looking in other aspects of recruiting, such as potentially landing Harold Perkins and Jacoby Matthews? We're going to get to all of that, but first, I have to say that I'm fine with where LSU ended up. Obviously, it stunk that the top 3 wide receivers in the class all decided to go to Alabama, but as you guys see here, it's pretty impressive that LSU was able to land who they were able to land. And look, there were no surprises from actual high school recruits during the early period. Now, what I will say is there are bigger question marks surrounding LSU football than recruiting, okay? Now, the first thing is we need to see who the coordinator hires are going to be, because as of right now, according to Football Scoop, it looks as if Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator of Cincinnati, and Matt House, the linebackers coach of Kansas City, will be the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, respectively, of LSU. Now, I've guessed from the beginning that Denbrock was going to be the guy because obviously this is Cincinnati as maxed out as they possibly can be, being the first group of 5 school to make it to the college football playoff. And then, of course, Denbrock's long, extensive friendship and history being alongside Brian Kelly. So I can easily see Denbrock actually ending up being the guy, even though an athletic Cincinnati beat writer Justin Williams says at this point Denbrock has not been contacted and or really has interviewed for any other jobs. And who can blame him? He really wants to focus in on what he has going on because he could do something pretty historic, which is obviously beat Alabama and maybe win this college football playoff. But as many of you know, Walker Howard and the rest of the recruits seem to not mind that they didn't know who their offensive coordinator was, which is why you were in the position the only wide receiver. I slobbered a little bit. That wasn't smooth at all. The only wide receiver you ended up signing in this period was really an afterthought when it comes to Louisiana wide receivers. Now, it could turn out that Landon Ibieta is the real deal Holyfield. LSU got very lucky that Malik Neighbors part of the last class, and you saw how good Malik Neighbors was as a true freshman. The same thing could be true here with Landon Ibieta, and we'll see what happens with the young receiver out of Mandeville. But that's the thing. A lot of offensive skill guys, and not only wide receiver, running backs, weren't going to sign early not knowing who their offensive coordinator was going to be. So, yes, that does stink. You notice LSU was able to keep commitments from all their offensive linemen. It did help that LSU retained their offensive line coach before the early signing period. So, once again, part of the reason why the recruits, some of these offensive recruits, decided to go to Alabama is that they know what they're getting into at Alabama. When you don't know who your offensive coordinator is going to be, or that offensive coordinator is not in place, it's kind of hard to sign on the dotted line. Now, as far as the defensive side of the ball, and before we get into the defensive side, I do want to include that our Jeremy Hill interview last week was fire! Are you kidding me? It was so much fun. Guess what? We actually timestamped the interview, so you can skip ahead to any topic you want to. Make sure you can find it. You can find it down below, and it was really a lot of fun, including that crazy Tom Brady story that he shared. Now, as far as the defensive coordinator is concerned, Matt House is the name that has been linked, and that obviously would help LSU land Jacoby Matthews and Harold Perkins. Those 2 recruits are going to be the names that you hear the most between now and February. Can LSU find a way to land both of them? Well, to do that, I think they would want to know who their defensive coordinator is going to be. And if they don't know who their defensive coordinator is going to be, the likelihood that they land elsewhere is potentially high. Now, what's interesting with those two names in particular, Texas A&M has a pretty full recruiting class at this point. They already have 27 signatures from high school recruits in the class of 2022. So is there even room for either one of those recruits? I don't know. It's kind of like no one wants to talk about this 25 high school recruit cap, but Alabama oversigns, Texas A&M oversigns, and well, it's worth questioning. I don't know what the actual rule is. Maybe some Texas A&M fan can or just anyone can enlighten me on why they've been able to sign so many players. But still, the bottom line is Jacoby Matthews and Harold Perkins will look really good in purple and gold. I like the likelihood of landing Jacoby Matthews a little bit better because he is a 5-star defensive back from Louisiana, and those guys tend to sign with LSU. Harold Perkins is a little bit more of a long shot, but if you get a defensive coordinator in place, that would obviously help out with Harold Perkins. Now, the major wild card here is Blake Baker. Blake Baker will no longer be the linebacker coach at LSU. He was one of the lead recruiters for Harold Perkins, and obviously that stinks. So that obviously lowers LSU's opportunity to land, to me, the number one player in the class of 2022, period, over anyone. So, yeah, I would obviously like to land Harold Perkins. I think he's a transcendent talent, but we shall see what actually happens. Now, this leads us to this final point that I want to get into, the transfer portal. Now, the biggest takeaway from the early signing period weren't even the high school recruits. Now, it was nice to see Ibieta, Quincy Wiggins, and Jordan Allen actually sign pen to paper, but you felt pretty good that all three of those guys were going to sign. All the other names were pretty much shoe-ins and or commits that were already in place for LSU. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it was a good day, but the high school recruits weren't really all that much of a surprise. The two biggest surprises, though, quite clearly was Miles Brennan decided to come back, and Miles Frazier, of course, signing with LSU. We've already done a video where I dove a little deeper on both of their decisions. That's floating in the top right corner of your screen. And look, it's just one of those things. Could this be LSU's lowest recruiting class in quite some time? It very well could, but if you land Jacoby Matthews and Harold Perkins, you will be better than 15th, and LSU's lowest recruiting ranking in the past decade has been 15th, which was in 2018, and that class ended up not being good at all. So, I mean, there were some really, really good players, but as far as depth is concerned, the 2018 class wasn't where it needed to be. So many players had never even played it down. So, yeah, we'll see. But, you know, if you land both of those guys, LSU shoots up the rankings. Now, what about the rest of the transfer portal? LSU is going to be after some really good players. You know, obviously, the names that you're going to hear the most, will LSU make a pursuit of a running back? Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs and Zach Evans are both sexy names. We'll see. I think the likelihood of them getting another transfer portal quarterback is relatively low, simply because they do already have a transfer portal quarterback in Miles Brennan. But you never know with Brian Kelly. He obviously is in the power position here, knowing that he has Garrett Nussmeier, Walker Howard, and Miles Brennan coming back. Now, we'll see what Garrett Nussmeier's plans are this offseason. I have no idea what those actually are. I still believe he should suit up for the bowl game, but still, we shall see what actually happens with Nuss. Now, is there another transfer portal quarterback out there that LSU could go after? Well, maybe, but also that transfer portal quarterback more than likely wants to go somewhere where he is for sure going to be able to play. So if Miles Brennan decides to come back, which he did, the likelihood that a portal quarterback would be on fire about joining LSU is indeed very unlikely. So the quarterback room, as followed, Miles Brennan, Garrett Nussmeier, and Walker Howard, looks to be the quarterback room you will have going into next year. LSU had the luxury, but the somewhat luxury, you can debate if it was a luxury or not, to have 4 different quarterbacks to choose from last spring, and obviously they ended up with not even one ready to play the bowl game. So once again, more doesn't necessarily mean better, and I like the 3 guys LSU has going into next season. So yeah, our house is burning down. So really quickly, I want to hurry up and finish this video and put out this fire. I say this, Cameron Ward looks to be pretty good, and I hope Lane Kiffin doesn't land him, but still, I think the likelihood of a transfer portal quarterback at this point is very low. Now, Neil Farrell opted out of the bowl game. There's a lot of bowl game previews we're going to get to before the Kansas State game on January 4th. And the big thing I want to know is who all is going to the bowl game. We touched on this in the last live stream. I want to know. I really do. I would love to do some type of meetup, and I'm still trying to determine my own travel plans to get on down to Houston. So yeah, let me know down below. Maybe we could do something really fun. As far as who the quarterback is going to be for the bowl game, we really don't have an update. So it's pretty crazy, right? When you think you get a clearer picture and the answers to pretty much any question you have about LSU football, more questions arise. It's funny, like we're just totally putting in the back burner this bowl game versus Kansas State. Now, obviously, we would rather Garrett Nussmeier or a scholarship quarterback play, but it looks as if it will be the Matt O'Dowd show or Tavion Falk show. But Neil Farrell, of course, opting out of the bowl game. I wouldn't be shocked if you see a few more opt-outs, but we'll see. Now, let's discuss one final thing, okay? Because I'm going to need your help down below. Now, before we finish, don't forget Van Lathan will be our guest on Thursday night, so make sure you check that out. Our J Hill interview was so special, and we want to keep doing the guest. And for those that are new, Jeremy Hill was our first ever interview on this channel. Now, let me know what you guys think about not only this recruiting class, but comment down below your thoughts on Mike Denbrock and Matt House as a potential OC and DC. Now, just based on what I've learned from live streams, the OC DC, I feel as if you guys feel a little bit better about Denbrock than you do about Matt House, mainly because of familiarity between Denbrock and Kelly. But give me your honest opinion on both of them, because we are working on some deep dives on both of them. In particular, Matt House. Would you rather Durante Jones be kept? And I think that's also a big thing, because Jake Peets wasn't really that great at all last year, and Durante had a strong close. I think a lot more of you are on, pun intended, fire about Durante coming back. So obviously comment down below your thoughts on that. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! We're doing burnt chicken wings tonight. Let's go.